Hi, friends. This is the Meme Team podcast, where we talk about the logic behind virality, because marketing isn't just logic, it's culture. And this podcast decodes both. So with that, we had to revisit a couple topics, Sonia.
Yeah, exciting news from
Yeah.
Deloitte if you're an employee.
So we saw this over the weekend, and we were kind of laughing about it because we weren't sure if it was real, but it's real.
Yeah.
So Deloitte updated its benefits packages this past month, and so now Deloitte's U.S. employees can buy up to $1,000 of Lego sets as part of their overall wellness and benefits program.
There you go. Work 24/7, but you get to build Lego.
Yeah, maybe that's okay. You go to your kid's party, have these Legos that I can
I
share.
got you a new Lego set. Hey man, if you're gonna, have your employees work that hard, you might as well give them additional benefits that'll hopefully help their work-life balance.
Totally. I read an article on this, and it was like they had a bunch of quotes from employees, and they were all pretty psyched. I mean, who wouldn't be pumped about it? But people were saying like, "Hey, after a stressful day, building a Lego set for 2 hours is really relaxing."
Did you see that the Pope was wearing a White Sox hat over the
So,
weekend? So
I
he finally came
saw.
out.
It's so
That is,
cute.
yeah, he's a true White Sox fan. So that's exciting for him and for the White Sox.
Maybe he could do like an opening blessing or something.
They need a little extra help. The White
Yeah.
Sox aren't exactly known for doing very well. And that's about all I know about baseball.
Don't follow us for baseball.
No, definitely. And then last one, which just kind of, quick glance over is that Taylor Swift is dropping Easter eggs for her fans right now.
Yeah.
But this is what we were talking about, community engagement. Her fans are like super into it and, trying to figure out what the clues mean. Okay, so let's get started on our first topic. This just came out today. So Amazon Ads and Roku announced an exclusive partnership creating the largest authenticated footprint in connected TV. That's going to be about 80 million US households. The integration lets marketers use Amazon's demand side platform, or DSP, to target Roku's logged in audience, spanning Fire TV, Roku OS, Prime Video, and the Roku channel. And early tests have already shown that there's been a 40% increase in reach and a 30% reduction in overfrequency. So this is pretty big because I know as a marketer myself, TV has always been like, the last frontier, especially because it just seems so expensive, one. And then two, it's very diffuse. It's very hard to target the exact demographics that you want to be in. The returns are not that great. TV used to be like this huge platform. And, every year at the Super Bowl, we see companies, pay those big bucks. I think this last year it was like 3 million for a 30-second ad. And, that's kind of always been like the pinnacle as a marketer. You kind of want to, have an ad at the Super Bowl. But it's always been like out of reach, especially for, smaller companies. So I think this is starting to show where the next generation of TV ads are headed. Because this is combining Roku and Amazon, it addresses several critical marketing pain points. The fragmentation solution, it's making it easier for you to target the exact shows, the exact demographics, the exact times, because it helps you ID them and it puts the data in an easier way to follow and to understand. There's better performance tracking. Marketers can now track CTV ad exposure directly to Amazon sales, creating a closed loop attribution system. So that's going to be, super good, especially for brands that are selling on Amazon, to figure out who's buying and then how they got there through like one of your Amazon ads on the TV, like, maybe comparing different shows. And it's also allowing strategic positioning for both of the companies to strengthen their market position. Amazon gains scale, while Roku secures access to premium retail data and advertising technology. Have you ever worked at a company that had a TV ad?
I have. Well, I mean, I used to work at Fitbit, so we had ads all the time. There was that. But before that, I worked at some startups where it was a really, really big deal to get an ad because we
Yeah.
were such small startups. So those were really exciting. And it was hard because it's so expensive. If you're just a big brand and you have like hundreds of millions or like $1 billion like coming in every year, then you can look at this ad spend as like, okay, it's 5% of the budget. But like for the startups that I've worked at, it was like, okay,
Yeah.
this is 95% of our marketing budget.
Yeah.
Or like this is more than
Yeah.
half of it. let's hope it goes well. And of course, it never did because that's not how these things work.
Yeah, definitely. And
I do
even if
think it's
it did, the
interesting.
tracking is super difficult.
Yeah, for an advertiser who's choosing to put some dollars behind this, I'd be very curious how they work with the Amazon or Roku team in getting to their target market. And I think the only person who would be able to answer that is like an account executive.
Right. That's what I was gonna say. I was like, you probably just get your own. 3 years ago, Hulu would let you, start trying to do ads, but you would have to do it yourself. So I wonder if that kind of changed.
I wonder because like
Yeah.
like the last time I ran Google like SEM ads, so like search engine marketing, right? PPC and stuff, or
Mhm.
that was part of it. But like last time I did that, I mean, it was at this point where Google was really just trying to get you, the advertiser, to spend less time in their console or their ad manager and
Mhm.
more just focused on give us more money and we'll find it for you. It was basically just like just increase your budget and we'll find you the audience. And we would ask like, but like, how will you know? And
Yeah.
and this was like after like multiple lunches with like a full Google like account executive team where I was like sitting with them. It was like 10 of us. And I'm like, how does it work? And they're like, don't worry, we got it. And I'm like, that's not an answer. So
Yeah.
I'm very curious about this Amazon Roku thing. And is it going to be like that? Is it going to be, no, just give us some money and we will get you the exact show that
Mhm,
reaches your
mhm.
demographics?
Yeah.
Now, I do also think what could be interesting is if teams are able to really be strategic about this and figure out how to create additional content, or and I say content in the broadest sense, but what I mean is like it'd be interesting if they through this journey and figure out like, oh, there are some shows that convert really, really well for us. That's interesting. And if they were then to dig deeper into those shows, right, and those demographics, and if they're able to then uncover additional content or even just arbitrage opportunities where maybe they'll find like our product converts really well with people who watch AMC shows or
Mhm.
people who watch Jack Reacher, like they love our
Yeah, right.
product. But
Exactly.
that'd be really interesting.
But
I
I
mean,
mean,
that
there's a lot of people like watching those shows. So I think this is a great idea. So one of the things I always remember is, first of all, I hate Hulu just because of the ads themselves. But now that it seems that so many, companies are heading that direction, even Netflix is going to be trying them soon. Ads are kind of just going to come back, and that's just going to be the reality of life, right? But I always kind of hated that Hulu ads seem so random. Like,
mm,
why am I getting this like weird ad? And then sometimes you would get the same ad back to back. So clearly something was like messed up in their process. This is what Roku and Amazon are trying to fix, right? They're going to give you more advanced targeting capabilities, give you interactive features like QR codes and shoppable ads. They're going to track you across devices, and then give you Amazon's retail data, which I think is going to be like the huge unlock here, right? Because one of the things I've always wondered is like, if I see an outfit on a TV show, show me the link so I can like
yeah.
look at it to see if I can buy it myself. I've found like many, many outfits on TV that I'm like, oh my God, I love that. Like, how can I get it? And then I have to go search, Instagram sites to try to find it. And I'm like, this is such a like missed opportunity of like, you have my attention, probably more attention than you're going to get when I'm, doing other activities in order to be able to sell me stuff. And knowing that I am interested in something gives you like the ability to target me with these ads now going forward. So I'm hopeful that this is kind of going to be useful. And then I kind of wanted to talk about the cost and targeting breakdown for national campaigns. It's usually around $250 to $500,000 for a campaign, and you get basic targeting, right? You kind of just choose a time slot and a channel. You don't really get to do much else, based on like the actual TV shows, the demographic. So it's better for like national campaigns, obviously. So these connected TV, CTV, and streaming ads are lower minimum spend, about 10,000 to 25,000 to start, and then it gives you advanced targeting capabilities based on demographics, behavior, and interests. So most of that data, a lot of us are already tracking for our consumer, right? We're tracking like, where they're based, their buying habits, what they're buying. You can generally tell like age demographics at that point, whether they're urban or, more suburban. And so you're able to target people based on that. And then if they tell me that like, these are the types of people that watch these shows, now you can just target based on those shows. So it's a growing market. It's projected to grow up to 72 billion this year. And they're already seeing that it's growing 20% from last year to 2.8 billion. Super exciting.
It is exciting. And I think like, I mean, if you have like the Hulu account where you still get ads, I'm sure you just want better ads.
Mhm.
You know, like you don't want to see the same pharmaceutical ad over and over again.
Yeah, that you do see a lot of pharmaceutical
A
ads on.
lot. Yeah, when there's like the weird like butterfly graphic and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and to your point though, when I watch an ad, I prefer it to be
Mhm,
somewhat relevant to my interests or
mhm.
needs.
Yeah. So I think that that's where there's a huge opportunity here. And then obviously, since it's starting out and it's brand new, now's the time to be testing that if you do have budget in order to kind of get them. I assume that you're going to be assigned an account executive because they wouldn't just let
Yeah.
you kind of figure that out by yourself. So
Yeah.
now's the time to use up their time, like get them to help you and to like kind of figure out like what it is. Sometimes they even like, not, they won't give you like discounts, but they'll like give you a little bit more so that you can figure out like what's working for you and what's not. And then obviously the prices are going to increase the more that people start doing this, as we've seen across every ad network, right? The more that people want to target, the same demographics, the more that it's going to be costly for you and your company.
Okay, so this is related to what you were saying a few minutes ago. Uh,
About wanting specific outfits.
Broad City, the show with Abby Jacobson and Alana Glazer, Comedy Central. You know, it had a great run, but it hasn't been on the air in a long time.
Mhm.
So this is how long I was thinking about this romper. There's an episode,
Okay.
and in it, Alana Glazer is wearing this amazing strapless romper.
Hmm.
It has like leaves on it. I was obsessed with it. And when I saw the outfit, I was like, oh my gosh, that is the perfect romper. I want it.
Mm. Ooh, it is pretty.
And I didn't know like it's you're looking at it's
Yeah, I'm
cute,
looking
right?
at
And
it.
I was like,
Yeah.
where do I find this? So I would
Mhm.
Google, nothing came up. I mean, just pictures of it. A couple months ago, I realized, wait, maybe I could ask Chat
Oh
GPT.
my God.
And I did immediately. Chat GPT is like, oh yeah, that is from Topshop.
Yeah, yeah,
And I was like, oh my God, that's what it is.
yeah.
So I Googled it, the exact product name, and it came up on Poshmark.
Poshmark.
It was
Yeah.
the only listing. So I clicked on it and it was in my size.
Wow. Yeah.
So I ordered it. I got it in the mail a couple days later. It was perfect. So
Wow. It was meant to be.
it was meant to be, right? Oh my
Wait, so
gosh.
now we have to see you in it. I mean, you probably can't wear it to a podcast episode, but let's do like a night out with the
Yes.
husbands and then we'll
Yeah.
wear it and then we'll update
Yeah.
everybody with like an Instagram or
To
oh,
know.
yeah, a
But
photo
yeah.
of some sort.
Okay, the takeaway
Amazing.
here, the
Yeah, the
takeaway
takeaway
here
here.
is if
Yeah.
you don't know, ask ChatGPT. Maybe it'll at least find the product name for you.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so takeaways for this. See, people will go to extreme lengths to find a product that they love. So you have to try to get in front of them as much as possible. And that's what Amazon and Roku are offering here. And I think, TV shows are like one of those things that like you can just start testing, right? I'm sure some TV shows are going to be more than others, but these are other things that you can kind of hypothesize about your customer. Like what TV shows do they watch? Maybe it's not Reacher because that one's probably going to be expensive because it's so popular, but maybe it's a smaller show that, they might like and starting to use that one to get in front of them. And then, I think it's also showing just how important it is for data tracking, for you to keep track of your data, and then also to learn new dashboards to keep track of other data that might resonate with your user.
Totally, yeah. And I think it's cool. Like I think it could help TV advertising be a little bit more accessible to brands that who are new to it. Hopefully they have more access to data or even just if they can better target, based on their product, then like hopefully that's a win for kind of everybody in that sense of like if you're going to spend the money, hopefully you can at least get better ROI. And for consumers, it's hopefully you'll see ads that you actually kind of care about.
Yeah, definitely. There's been a time, I think, for the past like 10, 15 years where like TV ads haven't had the best return on investment because you've kind of either had to go national and not know that it's going to reach your actual consumer or try some of these, Hulu ads. And that doesn't seem to be very well targeted either. So brands that have the capability of doing ads need to make sure that they're providing marketers with the type of demographics and data that they need in order to build, good targeted networks in order to create ads that people won't mind, especially if you're like Netflix and are introducing ads when people still don't want them.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of ads, Alo Yoga and just over a dozen influencers were hit with a class action lawsuit. In the 38-page complaint, the plaintiffs have said that like Alo's built a brand and consumer base mostly through social media marketing, and most of the company's revenue is attributed to online sales. But a lot of it comes from like influencer promotions, as well as promotions that basically misrepresent the paid endorsements. The plaintiffs are arguing that they paid a premium based on how they perceived what the product would be, based on how these influencers talked about Alo Yoga, not knowing, that these were paid placements because they felt the influencers didn't properly disclose that these were paid placements. If the plaintiffs succeed, Alo and its influencers could be on the hook for more than $150 million. So it's a lot of money. And
That
I
is, wow.
mean, for a D2C brand, right, where it's like
Mhm.
everything is coming online, I'm actually surprised that 90% of their sales come from online, and that I'm surprised it wasn't like 99 or 100%
Mm.
because I'm like, where do you buy Alo Yoga products?
They have
Do they have
stores
stores?
now.
Oh,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
do.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So maybe the 10% comes from stores. But anyway,
It's
like,
huge in Australia. That's where I first got mine. Yeah, I was in Sydney in 2023. They had just been talking about that they're going to come out to America. And I'm like, oh, well, they're probably going to make it to LA because
yeah.
obviously yoga capital or
Yeah.
whatever. So
Yeah.
I knew we'd see it soon.
So you have some of their products. How do you
Mhm.
feel about the quality?
I prefer Viore in terms of, yeah, like the fit. Yeah, for me, it's, yeah, I mean, probably all women, right? The fit is like the thing that matters most. Like Lululemon pants are far too like tight. I have way too much hips and ass for them. Uh, but Viore seems to have like a better range for me. Plus I'm short as well, so I, don't like super long pants.
Oh.
And then yeah, I'm not big on D2C, like buying things online like that, because I always want to try it on because I've had such bad experiences.
So a little bit of history on this. Back in 2009, this was when the FTC updated its endorsement guides to include social media. And so for the first time, they made it clear that, any kind of material connection, like payments, gifts, brand partnerships, need to be clearly and conspicuously disclosed. So it didn't specify how. So the whole hashtag ad thing, that
Yeah,
wasn't actually written into law. It was just that it has to be clear. So you don't
right.
have to do hashtag ad or hashtag sponsored. That is just one way to make it really clear.
Mine is like a long time ago. And that's funny. Yeah, now
Yeah.
that you're saying here that the crackdown happened later, that's what I remember is the crackdown.
Yeah, which is interesting. So that some of the crackdown included like some of these warning letters from the FTC went to celebrities like Naomi
Mhm.
Campbell. Warner Brothers settled with the FTC for paying YouTubers like PewDiePie to promote a video game without the proper disclosure. And then 2017, Lord and Taylor, they paid 50 influencers to post photos wearing the same dress, but none of them disclosed the sponsorship. So the FTC ruled this deceptive and settled with the company. That was one of the big precedents for
Mhm.
this. And so I think it's just become one of those things that, not every brand, not every influencer gets in trouble. Just kind of like when you illegally download music, not everybody gets in trouble, but the few that do,
Yeah.
they pay the price. Everyone's got to be really careful about this. We were careful about this when we had our sequel sponsorship. But I do think it's interesting.
Mhm.
I didn't realize, like, I thought hashtag ad was like in the law. I didn't realize that,
Well,
like,
yeah,
you
I
could
mean, I
find a
feel like a
different way.
lot of these things, the government doesn't tell you exactly what it wants you to do, which is obviously a huge reason why, companies try to, fight back or complain about it, right? Because those rules aren't set in stone. So a lot of companies, I mean, this came up with Coinbase, where they're like, if you could just tell us what you want us to do, we will do that, And then the FTC is like, well, no, you figure it out, and then we'll tell you if it works. Like a lot of companies want to be able to stay within the law. I mean, who wants to be sued for this stuff, right? But also on the government side, they're like, well, we don't know. You guys are at the forefront of this. You guys are figuring this out far long before we are. So like maybe you guys get together and figure it out. Right. And so I think that became an easy way to do it, is to, just say, fine, hashtag ad, hashtag sponsored, in order to make it very clear that this is happening. But even that gets, played around with, because I remember one of the things being like, people would like shrink the hashtag sponsored or hashtag ad. So it's like barely visible, like in the corner, because, like we talk about here, like authentic user generated content is always going to do better than sponsored ads, because
Yeah.
people don't like being sold to, right? These influencers that like we know like the brand, and sometimes they genuinely do like the brands, and they do want to promote it. Of course, they want to get paid for it, right? Obviously, it does need to happen, and like the FTC is right to call it out. I just don't understand the hate from like people about like, oh, why is this an ad? Like, why is this like sponsored? It's like, because we want to sell you our stuff. Like, we know that these people that you guys follow, like we were talking in the above topic, we're trying to find the demographics and the ads and the things that you like in order to target you better, so that it isn't you getting a random ad for something that you might never buy, right? I think for me, that pisses me off even more. Like getting, pharmaceutical ads. Like, I
Yeah.
don't want any of that, right? But if I'm gonna get like aloe ads, like, that's gonna work for me,
Yeah.
I think also another thing to call out here is that I've heard from multiple people, including people that do not like ads in general, that Instagram ads are like the best ads, because they're visual, they're targeted, it includes influencers. So it's not always huge brands targeting you. It's, smaller brands using influencers that you do follow, in order to get in front of you. So that's kind of wild to me. The rules have been in place for like a while. It's kind of like, standard across social media now. So this seems kind of dumb for Alo to do.
Like to get in trouble, like
Yeah.
to
Like,
do this wrong.
why,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and I mean, I also say it's on the influencers too,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, Alo Yoga can't control what an influencer is going to say about them or how they're going to say it. They can say like, "Hey, you should use hashtag ad." And maybe an influencer is going to say, "I don't want to use that hashtag because it's going to kill my reach." And if I'm too overt about how I position this ad, it's not going to do well for either of us. So let me do it my way. I will try to weave it into the story, and then I can see, and I think that's a pretty common conversation that gets played out.
Hmm.
And then from there, that's when it gets all muddy. But what I think is kind of funny here is these influencers have like 300, 400, 500,000 followers on Instagram. So
Hmm.
these aren't like, you know, little guppy influencers with 10,000
Yeah.
followers. They have hundreds and hundreds of thousands. You're not new to this, therefore,
You got to be true to this.
yeah, like don't you know?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, that's the
yeah,
whole
don't you,
point, right? I think that's probably why the FTC's amount is so
yeah.
high.
Yeah.
You're a bigger account. This isn't your first sponsored ad. I do wonder too, like, why is it just Aloe? Like, are any of these other influencers doing a similar thing with
Oh.
other brands?
I mean, you
Because,
gotta
that makes it
wonder.
right. That would make it easy for the FTC to go after them.
Yeah, I mean, you know what I'll say? Like, I think if anything, it's just a bigger hit to them than Alo Yoga because they have the resources, they've got a legal team, they can probably figure something out.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
can
yeah.
probably spin something that's like, look, we told them that they
Right.
had to disclose the ad. They didn't do it. And
Hmm.
like, yeah, that's on us, but we can't control what people are going to say about us.
Hmm.
And like, I have a feeling that they can probably easily say that. Is it possible that they said, hey, don't do hashtag ad? Sure, anything's possible, right? I
Yeah.
could be wrong. But I think like what's more likely? I think more
Yeah.
likely they said, "Hey, like let's make sure to do this by the book," or
Yeah.
at least start it out that way.
Hmm.
One thing I'll say, the influencers that I follow, anytime they talk about a product, I assume it's an ad. And that's fine with me.
Right.
I'm okay with that. Like, I'm not mad. I'm there for the education. If they're going to talk about like, oh, you should wear barefoot shoes when you do weightlifting. One, I believe in that, but two, I'm like, well, I'm going to assume that this barefoot shoe company is sponsoring this. I don't look for the disclosure, but that's my personal behavior.
Hmm.
So anytime they're like link to my storefront, I know exactly what I'm in for because that's the whole point. Those are the kinds of influencers I follow, and they're all pretty they're mostly pretty small in that under 120,000 followers. But anyone like north of that, if a person with 500,000 followers is talking about like their love for Alo Yoga, I don't know why any consumer today would think, "Oh, this is organic." Like they're doing this out of the goodness of their hearts because they believe in small brands. Like I do think it's a little funny to be like, were you really deceived by that?
Yeah.
Let's be real.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a way of doing it.
unless the influencer is saying, "I am not being paid for this
Right. I was
thing."
gonna say, because that's what
Yeah.
we do, right? Like we
Yeah.
want Lego to sponsor us, Road to sponsor us. We
Yeah.
want
Yeah, we
but it's
want.
like we're telling you they're clearly not sponsoring us, right?
Yeah, Lego, if you're listening, which you are, please send us
Yeah.
the Super Mario Legos. We have a lot of missing sets. We would like more.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, I've also had it, on some of my favorite podcasts where it's like they'll mention a brand that they like and then say, no free ads, right? Which means that this is a brand that I'm shilling by myself purely for the love of it because they're not paying us, right? So there's ways to like make it humorous. But yeah, I do agree that at this point, just assume that any brand being mentioned by like a consumer or an influencer is trying to, sell you on it. The other thing though to think about here is like we are very clearly in social media. This is our jobs. We have that, not just the knowledge, but like we go into it with like, okay, take everything with a grain of salt, And even like here, one of my biggest things is that like, I don't understand why people complain again about ads. You should be, wanting better ads for you. I have to realize that that's because I'm a marketer and I like good ads, but obviously not everybody feels like that.
Yeah, not everyone does.
So, but yeah, ultimately this isn't about the consumer. This is still on the influencers in Alo Yoga because there are rules and they should be following them. And at this point, it's been long enough that everybody kind of knows it's a standard now. I do wonder if this is going to, continue on now that Lena Khan isn't at the FTC.
Oh,
Yeah. So we'll see if it continues.
yeah.
And we'll, definitely update you guys on what the outcome is of whether there's a settlement or they have to pay or what happens.
Yeah, we'll see.
Awesome. So let's head into marketing topic 3, where we're talking about some other influencers shilling something that's coming up in the F1 world. So Apple is getting behind the new Formula One movie, and we're finally starting to see what can happen when Apple puts big marketing budgets behind their movies and their TV shows, which I'm sure many of us marketers have complained about. I know I have, because I always wonder, like, how come nobody hears about their shows aside from, the big ones like Severance and Slow Horses? But I mean, even those are like hard to hear about until this year. It really seems as if Apple is starting to realize that they have more resources that they can be using for their TV and movies, which makes sense because they're spending so much money to pay the artists and pay the directors for these movies and TV shows, and then not helping them distribute them to like their audience aside from any of the in-app ads and like trailers that you get within the Apple TV app. We're seeing them really put everything behind this F1 movie. It's showcasing a dramatic shift from their historically minimal promotion approach to a strategy that combines innovative tech. Many of you might have seen the haptic trailer that came out last week. Experiential marketing with their premiere tonight in New York. They're having like 2 rows of like F1 cars at their movie premiere, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. And then
And
they're
then
having
I wanted to call out because I don't know
yeah.
if everyone knows what experiential marketing is,
Yeah.
but I remember a while back the Severance pop up, right?
Mhm.
They had like this pop up in Grand Central Station where it was like this big glass cubicle where the actors were in it,
Mhm.
like
And we're
they
at
were,
their workstation.
yeah,
So
at
they
their
built out like the
workstations.
whole set basically. So the fact that they're kind of really going with this is showing that they like care and are starting to see the returns to that, right? Like I'm sure that they saw huge returns from that Grand Central experiential marketing experience. And obviously it was one of the most watched shows that like Apple has had. I think one of the biggest reasons why they're doing this is because their Apple products are being showcased in a new light with the F1 movie. We saw that with the haptic trailer that just came out. It made the phone vibrate whenever any of the cars were like, roaring by. So it kind of shows off their phone in a way that like hadn't been possible before. One of the other things that they mentioned was that like the camera that they used to film the racing had to be invented because they realized that they couldn't keep track of the cars without having this new technology with the camera. Remember the Ryan Coogler like Kodak video where he came out and he was explaining like the different IMAX theaters and like what the different screen sizes are, and then the sound that each of them have. Like I think this could be like a good idea for them. It's like kind of showcasing what their cameras are able to do now that they had to invent them for this particular movie. Some people have like been questioning like, oh, are they actually still innovating? Like even I've done that, right? But this kind of shows that like they still care about the technology. They're just putting it into different areas. And if they're gonna like do it for one of their other verticals like Apple TV and like movies, then like they should be showcasing that in order to promote all the work that they're doing at the company.
I'm not an F1 fan. It's
Yeah.
not my thing. But I'll just say as a brand has really been able to really balance the whole appeal to luxury brands and not luxury brands, positioning those all really well and reaching tons and tons of people. This is going to be a really cool example of seeing them go pedal to the metal, right? With
Yeah.
the advertising for this and with that full experience. Of all the brands or kind of entities to do this, like to go this deep with Apple, I think this is the one that's best positioned to be successful in doing it.
It definitely makes sense why they've chosen this movie. Brad
Yeah.
Pitt is a huge global star. They're getting Lewis Hamilton to help promote it, who's also an executive producer in the movie. They've also spoken about how authentic the actual races are, which has never been done in any of like the other F1 these are, TV shows that have been out there. So that's really going to bring in the real hardcore fans who like kind of want to have that experience. Another thing here that I didn't call out earlier was that I think it's very smart to be focusing so much on mobile because so many people use the iPhone and they use the iPhone as like their main way to watch content. There's a lot of young people that watch things on mobile. So the fact that they're starting to create ways for you to engage with content within your phone or with your phone is super smart of them because it makes it another reason why you should have an Apple phone over an Android. While we may joke that they don't do any, marketing, one of the ways that they do great marketing is by using their Apple TV app to show the trailers for different shows. Yes, you have to do it on your own and like search, for the content, but they usually have like, 10 ads or trailers for their shows. This made me realize that other companies do not do this. Mainly, I was thinking about this recently with Disney because that new Pixar movie just came out and nobody had heard about it until they claimed that it was a failure, right? And like that's one of the things that I was like, well, I didn't see the ad like even in Disney. But I do also want to like call out that I hope that this isn't just for like the biggest movies and the biggest shows, right? Because some of the lesser known shows with like lesser known actors are also really good. So you want to be able to give at least a minimal marketing budget to some of these other shows in order to help them find their audience somewhere.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see more of that because I think there are so many kind of niche shows that people really
Hmm.
like. Like
Yeah.
Severance is a good example of that, where it's hugely popular, but also there are still a lot of people who haven't seen it.
Right.
Like so it's still kind of niche or like cult-ish in that regard,
Yeah, for
but
sure.
the excitement they've been able to generate through the different kinds of experiences they've been focusing on, like that's been really cool to see. So to your point, like yeah, I mean like my hope is that sure this will be the kind of the first like premier like full scale advertising, but it'll be cool to see if there are kind of indie or smaller shows and movies that can also take advantage of some of that stuff too.
Yeah, definitely. Because those are the
Yeah.
ones that need it most, right? Because, like, let's
Yeah.
be honest, this movie was probably going to get a lot of attention anyway because
Yeah.
Brad Pitt is in it, because F1 is involved, Lewis
Yeah.
Hamilton is out there, promoting it. So they were already going to be big. But like I said, I hope that they're also going to include some of the smaller shows that
Yeah.
don't often get that much attention, like For All Mankind, Silo, Bad Sisters. Like, these are all shows that I have loved and watched, but I had to find them by myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to go back to what you were saying about Disney real quick.
Hmm.
Disney could do better just by being a tiny bit more strategic
Mhm.
in their Disney Plus app. Because when I launched that app, it is a complete shit show of
Yeah.
whatever they serve me. And what's
Hmm.
also really frustrating is I have a 6-year-old, and sometimes even on their account, the content that's served to them isn't really age appropriate. Why are they getting served this stuff when, like, my kid is here for Bluey and Lilo and
Yeah.
Stitch? Like, can we just keep it to that? But instead,
Yeah.
they're getting served like random PG-13 movies from 1998 when it's like, can we not? Like this is not what we're here for.
Hmm.
And you know it, Disney. You know
Yeah.
it. Put a little bit of strategy into this.
Yeah. I mean, that goes to show that even the biggest brands still haven't figured out their newest verticals.
Oh yeah, gosh. They probably have like a 50-person team like trying to figure it out together
Yeah.
when it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
the answer
Disney,
is
hire us. We can
hire
help.
us. Give us 10 minutes and we will arrange all those icons properly.
Yeah. So, takeaway here for me is that tech companies can leverage their hardware advantages for content marketing, right? Like, let's use what you're building on the tech side to promote it on the digital side. A company that did this really well, throwback to Dyson, right? Like, this is their verticals talking to each other and then figuring out how they can create better experiences and better products for their current consumer. And then if you have different verticals, like use those, like use them across your platform to be able to promote your other products to your consumer. The delivery is just as important as the content itself. And if you have their eyeballs in one vertical, use that for the other verticals because that is a whole experience that they can be having from your company.
All right, I want to talk about Sprout Social's annual report. So I've been doing this report for 18 years now, surveyed over 4,000 consumers, 900 social media practitioners, and 300 marketing leaders. And this is their annual report to uncover why and how consumers' relationship to social media is changing. It is validating a lot of what I had been thinking about social media and my sort of approach to it, and even the recommendations I've been giving to people um, who are starting their social media strategy. So, a couple highlights from the report are, look, 98% of social media practitioners agree that social content has to keep up with online trends and culture. 94% of social media practitioners agree they have to be chronically online in order to work in social media. When we think about like the cultural moments today, like being in the zeitgeist, it's all through social media. So
Mhm.
it obviously makes sense that people think they need to be chronically online. Shout out to all the social media managers, mental health, because it's very hard to be chronically
This is why
online.
I'm not a social media manager anymore.
We're just on social media,
I'm
but
just chronically online purely for personal interest.
yeah. One really interesting nugget here that I think is most salient to marketing strategy today is more than half, so 57% of marketing leaders attest that their executives completely trust their social media team. And now this rises to 74% among those executives themselves. That's kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
I
cool to
wouldn't have thought
see.
it'd be that high.
Me
I mean, based
either.
on how people, not
Yeah.
complain, but kind of talk about it online.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. That based on those perceptions of
Mhm.
the social media intern, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah, or people feeling like social doesn't have a seat at the table. And
Yeah.
it's not to say that feeling is not valid, but
Yeah.
I will say I'm pleasantly surprised
Yeah.
that these
I mean,
numbers
and
are
honestly,
this
we can
high.
have more of that, right? Like it could be
Yeah.
higher. It should be higher at this point. Like social media marketing has been a thing since, when I first started in like 2009 with like Facebook, where it's like you're targeting your consumers and you're able to talk to them in that way. But now it's like a full on job. And like, these are older folks who have experience, who know how to talk to people and are using social media as a channel to get in front of their targeted consumer.
Yeah, totally. And now other stats here are around 75% of marketing leaders already say that organic and paid social marketing are top priorities for their organization, behind only content and website marketing. That was also really surprising to me. That definitely is in line with more than half of marketing leaders feeling like executives trust a social team. But more than that, it's like clearly, 3/4 of these marketing leaders are saying that social media is a top priority.
Yeah, I mean, it's like The biggest channel that you can have to not only get in front of your consumer, but have more of those authentic relationships with them. Content and, website marketing take a little bit longer, and it's harder to actually get that interaction from people. So it makes sense. On the flip side, I think a huge reason why executives are hesitant about social media is that it also allows you to have a higher chance of like making a mistake, because we've seen a lot of examples of companies responding poorly or in a bad way to customers, and that being what goes viral, and that loses so many like authenticity points and like goodwill points.
This to me was the most important. Users say that most important to them is authenticity, relatability, and entertainment. Authenticity, relatability, entertainment, that's most important to them. Least important are that the content is off the cuff or polished or product centric. Obviously, product centric is going to be last because, again, nobody wants to be sold to. We all want to be entertained. But what I think is interesting here is that production value is a lot less important to the consumers. Or like, I think brands should sacrifice that polish in service to being relatable, right? And to being authentic, because not everything looks perfect.
I think that makes sense for what we were talking about last week with Coco
Yeah.
Gauff and Rory McIlroy. Yes, they were a little prepared, but it still dealt with moments that happened off the cuff, with Coco Gauff having the mistake with like forgetting her tennis rackets, and then that becoming like the ad. That wouldn't have happened if they had that already prepared for ages.
Yeah, you're totally right. That means that they were watching and they were with them, they were in the moment and they were like, "Oh, let's make this cool thing." Like that proves all of that stuff. So that's cool. And then this last line here that I'll read from the report is audience growth and retention require delivering human-centric content that demonstrates you're paying attention to your community. Posting constantly won't endear people to you. It's more important to engage and interact with them. Even in a space as densely populated as social, those one-to-one moments still matter. I really love that. Like, I really love this now focus that like, don't be posting constantly if you're not really truly engaging with the community. And I also just think that's just a more sustainable way to run a social media channel. It's not sustainable to figure out like, let's create more content, more content, more content. Let's do 2 posts a day, every day, without fail. You're better off posting like once a day, as long as these are posts that are hitting those touchstones, right, of being authentic, relatable, providing value to your community, and then also you engaging with your community. And the other thing I'll add to this is it's not in the report. This is based on the things that like I've experimented with like on LinkedIn and in talking to other creators, other brands on LinkedIn. It's that LinkedIn will throttle your posts if you post too often. So, and I've tested this by changing my posting cadence, posting at like double posting within an hour or so. And I'll see that if I post something and then I post again on LinkedIn like an hour or basically less than 24 hours later, then that original post of the day will like the reach completely dies. I see that as like, okay, well then lesson learned. I'm only going to be posting 5 times a week because anything more than that for me just doesn't work. And I think if you are in the game of trying to get that slice of attention from people, then like
Be
you
smart
might
about
as
it.
well try to maximize for reach. Like if you have a lot to say, you have a lot to say, save it for next week, because there's no point in overloading your calendar or overloading your editorial calendar with content that is going to get suppressed anyway because you're posting so often.
Yeah, totally agree about not over posting, especially if it's not going to actually do anything to benefit you and your, social media strategy. But it does seem to counter how many social media people feel like they have to be online all the time and having to like, post through it, right? As we often see. So I wonder if that's like something where it's like you kind of separate the brand and the personal, but then a lot of people obviously are trying to build up their own personal brand as they're like working on like their brand. Also, I mean, I find that as well, where it's like, I have different strategies that when I work with companies and clients that I do with them, but then also I have to keep up my own social media posting. And I will admit that I kind of let mine kind of fall by the wayside. And now that we're doing this podcast, I'm like, okay, now that you have something to promote, you have to kind of do it more authentically. People don't just want to be sold all the time, right? So how
Yeah.
is it that you're kind of providing that type of content for them that isn't going to annoy them all the time, right? Because that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing. You don't want to annoy people.
Yeah. You don't want to annoy people. You don't want to miss anything. You want to be online so that you can at least be aware of all the key moments that are happening in your community. But then also don't post too much. It's
Agreed.
hard. I think one takeaway is social media is really, really hard.
Yeah. And I think one thing, just kind of staying on top of cultural moments, it's like not every cultural moment is going to be necessary for you to comment on, right? Or your brand to comment on. There are definitely things that fall within the scope of what your brand already does or like what it makes sense to kind of post for. So I think that's something that you as a company and as a marketer need to go through. Like what is coming up that kind of makes sense for us to post about. Obviously, creating editorial calendars and content calendars help in that regard because you're kind of planning ahead the types of posts you want to do. But you also don't want to miss out on, you know, having that sponsorship with like Coco Gauff like makes sense because you're reacting to something that is going on with her. Like, what are these cultural touch points that are happening that people can kind of relate to you in a different way that show that you're paying attention, but then also aren't overstepping your mark, right? Like, I think we've seen a lot of companies also comment on things that maybe they shouldn't be commenting on, right? Like, is it necessary to have an opinion on everything? I don't think
Right.
so.
No, I don't think so either. I think this is a good reason to really make sure that you have clear goals and strategy on social media. Like if you're a brand, you really have to make sure your content is aligned with your mission and your values and it's aligned with business goals. Because I think if you're leading with all those things and you're proactively creating content that meets business objectives, all like the fun stuff, you know, like the cultural moments, trends, I feel like that's gravy. If there's a moment that actually is in line with your company values and your mission, it's in line with your product in some way, and it feels like, oh, obviously we would say this. I feel like if it's obvious, then it would be obvious. And hopefully you would know, okay, we can say something here, we can do something here. And that way you're not feeling like, okay, what is the trend for the day that
Yeah.
we're going to glom onto?
You definitely don't want to feel as if you're bandwagoning just because other brands are doing it, because those brands end up looking far more lame than if they had never done it at all. I think another thing that, you know, marketers should remember, it's most likely that you're not going to go viral. So why put in all that effort to kind of plan it out if it's not actually going to result in anything, right? It's a lot easier and a lot better to kind of just go with the flow and be a little bit more authentic about it in order to kind of catch the wave.
Yeah, I think so. And like, I think the other thing too is virality doesn't always mean business growth.
Mm,
You know, like it is like sometimes it feels like, and maybe this is because we are marketers and we talk to other marketers a lot.
mhm.
Like sometimes it feels like people just want to go viral for the bragging rights. You know, like so you could do a victory lap among your friends and peers. And I get it. Like it is fun. It is fun when something you post goes viral. I'm not going to deny that. But it doesn't always mean that it's going to result in a bunch of new customers or new prospects.
Yes, but
Mhm.
adding that to your resume and having people know that you went viral
For
kind
no,
of,
for
you know,
sure. No, for sure. That's
like
what I'm
that
saying.
is
Like
definitely like a
it
result
is
that you can point to,
for
especially
sure.
if it happens multiple times. So I think that's kind of like the battle,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. No, I
Which is
get it.
hard,
It's hard.
right?
Yeah. It's just, but it's sort of just like, it just isn't sustainable or even
Yeah,
realistic to
for
be
sure.
like, okay, we're going to go viral once a week. I don't think the question is, can we go viral every day, every week? Like, I don't think that's helpful, but I do think it's good to have a goal of like, well, what are some of the viral likely moments we can achieve?
Right.
And maybe it's more thinking about that and thinking about like, well, how can we do this repeatedly on some kind of scalable level?
Agreed. Awesome. Well, why don't we finish up with takeaways?
Let's do it.
Okay, so for the Amazon Roku partnership, one takeaway for me is that smaller brands now have the opportunity to buy ad space on TV. But definitely make sure that you're using their product and their platform and dashboard and all that in order to get the data that's going to overlap with the data that you have already about your consumers. And, use it to the best of your ability. Like, talk to the account executive and like ask them for tips on like what they're seeing on other like-minded brands in order to like get in front of your consumer.
And a takeaway for me is when you are doing some advertising, or especially in this case of Amazon and Roku, where you should theoretically get more access to different kinds of data, you'll uncover more opportunities that you didn't know about before. Like you'll start to learn, I didn't know my audience had these kinds of content preferences. But then using that and thinking of how you can use that in your other parts of your marketing strategy. Hey, our audience is really into like spy thrillers. Maybe we can use an element of that in a future campaign. Like something
Awesome.
kind
No,
of,
I mean, that's kind of a
yeah,
way to think about it, right? Like, I mean,
yeah,
that's the whole point of marketing is everything kind of ties back into the product and service and your company. So it's like, what are you learning about your customers while you're making these ads? So
yeah.
definitely smart.
100%. Yeah. For Alo Yoga and the influencers, my thoughts to influencers is be careful. Whether you like it or not, you're building a brand on trust. So
Mhm.
you got to make sure that you're doing what you can to uphold that trust and don't give people a reason to think that you're being sketchy.
Yeah.
Like it's not worth it. The only asset you really have is the trust with your audience.
Mhm.
And so if you're worried about hashtag ad killing your reach, you've got to think more creatively or think more strategically about how you position these things.
Yeah, definitely. I think authenticity is a double-sided sword, right? Where it's like you're trying to build that up so that your consumer trusts you and actually wants to get your advice on products that they should buy. The minute that they sense that you're not being authentic or that you lose their trust, why would they pay attention to you anymore? And this also goes not just for your consumer, but for brands going forward. Like, how are these, influencers ever going to try to be a sponsor again for another brand, right? Because now it's like their name is tied to this lawsuit and it shows that like you're not willing to stick to the rules and that might open them up to some liability. So I don't think brands are going to want to like look at that either. So just stay on the right side of the law. Like you
Yeah.
don't want to lose business because you didn't follow a rule that has now become standard across, all channels.
Yeah. 100%.
For Apple's F1 marketing, I think a huge takeaway for me there is that mobile is becoming more of a source of, what people are watching. So now that the Apple iPhone is going to be creating these sorts of like, trailers, maybe, movie studios and like TV studios should be looking at how they can use that to their advantage. Because I'm sure Apple isn't just going to want to use it for their movies, but will allow other companies to use it as well. And then, really think about how your cross-platform marketing can work. Apple has been doing pretty well with like their Apple TV ad, but what are they doing with other apps that they have, and how are they using that to promote the other products that they're selling? Let's bring it together and like just start using the budget that you can for like other shows, especially the smaller ones, which don't have as big of an audience as, the F1 movie is going to have.
Yeah. Especially the smaller ones for sure. Okay. And the last one on the Sprout Social Index, a key takeaway for me is, hey, it's cool that social media finally has a real seat at the table. That's awesome. Use it wisely. We are already chronically online, but see if you can be smart about it while also protecting your health, right?
Yeah.
Stay hydrated, go to sleep early. No, I mean like sure, keep up with the trends, keep up with the cultural touch points, of course, but then take advantage of the trends only when you feel like it makes sense for your brand, it's wise for you, it's sustainable for you, and you feel like it can really meet some key business objectives.
Yeah, a takeaway for me is the flip side of that. Now that you know, or actually, first off, find out, does your executive trust you? Because,
Yeah,
hopefully you are on the, 57% to 74% of the people that are trusted. But that also means that you are the guardian of your social media, channels, which means that if you think that something doesn't, mesh with what you want to post out there, it doesn't align with the mission of the brand, like push back on the executives and tell them like, hey, I don't think that's actually going to do well. And here's why. And then, come to them with the data and say like, our audience generally likes this. Our audience doesn't like this. One example here that I'm thinking about right now specifically is Duolingo and their social team, right? Like, would the conversation of being AI first been different if their social team had been like, hey, the discourse online is that people aren't really feeling that type of, company when they say that? Like, is there a way that we can position this message in order to not make people hate us? Because that ended up being far more damaging than if they had, talked about it in some way. And, they tried to, fix it with, the other stunt that they did, which we haven't heard anything about. So really, I think the AI first,
Yeah.
platform is continuing on, at least a Duolingo. But that's something that, like, now that you have a seat at the table, what are you using that seat for?
That's great. I love that. I think that's a really good, well-rounded way to balance out that section. Cool.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, friends, this has been fun.
Yeah.
If you like this episode, please leave us a review and a rating on Spotify. We read all of them. We see all of them. And aside from that, I guess we'll see you next week.
Yeah, definitely. And then you can follow me at Sonia Baschez on LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads, Instagram.
And you can follow me at Amanda Nat on LinkedIn, Threads, Instagram, Twitter.
Yeah, and then you can follow the entire podcast and get all the new episodes at memeteampodcast.com. And then we're on Instagram and Twitter.
Yeah, that's right. Find us. Find us everywhere.
Yeah, find us everywhere.